There will come a time in your life when you will feel invisible. You'll walk into a room and the one who once lit up in your presence now looks through you. Their tone has changed. Their words are shorter. Their attention is no longer yours to hold. And somewhere deep inside, it begins to sting. Not because you need them to survive, but because you remember what it felt like to be seen, to be appreciated, to be held in regard. But here's the truth. When someone stops valuing you, it is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their vision. And this is where most people make the mistake. They chase, they plead, they try harder, they lower their standards just to feel enough again. But I want to tell you something that very few have the courage to say. The trick is not to beg for their attention. The trick is to withdraw your energy. Yes, that's the simple shift. Withdraw not in anger, not in resentment, but in self-respect. You see, when you pull your energy back from those who do not honor it, something powerful begins to happen. You stop being an option and become a mystery. You stop giving them easy access to your light, and they begin to notice the darkness in your absence. Most people don't value water until the well runs dry, and so you must let them feel your absence. You must allow them the silence of your voice, the pause of your effort, the stillness of your presence. Because when you remove your energy from where it is not welcomed, you are not being cold, you are being wise. You are not rejecting them, you are choosing yourself. And this isn't about revenge. It's not about making them regret. It's about finally understanding that your value does not decrease just because someone stopped seeing it. Think of the sun. Even when it is covered by clouds, it does not stop shining. Even when the world turns its back and night falls, the sun does not disappear. It simply waits for the world to turn again. You must be like that, unshaken, unbothered, whole. You don't need to announce your worth. You don't need to prove it. You live it quietly, powerfully, and with dignity. Let them go if they must. Let them forget if that's their choice. But never forget yourself. Never devalue yourself just to fit in someone else's shrinking vision. And here's what often happens, like clockwork. The moment you stop chasing, they begin to wonder. The moment you stop explaining, they begin to reflect. The moment you stop showing up for them, they begin to notice what it meant when you did. But by then, you may have outgrown what you were once begging for. Because distance doesn't just reveal who truly values you. It also reveals who you truly are when you stop being dependent on anyone's validation. So the next time someone stops valuing you, don't panic. Don't retaliate. Don't chase. When someone no longer values you, the most powerful move you can make is to withdraw your energy. It sounds simple, but it's one of the most difficult lessons a person can learn. We live in a world that constantly tells us to try harder, to prove ourselves, to fight for our place in someone's life. But what if the real strength lies not in fighting to stay, but in knowing when to walk away? Withdrawing your energy doesn't mean disappearing or cutting someone off in anger. It means pulling back the parts of yourself you've been giving freely, your attention, your time, your emotional presence, and returning them to yourself. When someone begins to treat your presence like background noise, when they stop noticing the small ways you show up, it's not your job to increase the volume. It's your cue to step into silence. Energy is not just about effort, it's about intention. It's about where you focus, who you prioritize, and what you pour your soul into. When someone stops valuing you, it means they no longer see the energy you bring as important. They take it for granted. And in doing so, they tell you more with their indifference than they ever could with words. There is a quiet dignity in choosing to no longer offer what is no longer appreciated. Not out of bitterness, but out of self-awareness. You begin to understand that your emotional resources are not infinite. They are precious, and they must be guarded. You are not a never-ending well of comfort, validation, or loyalty to be accessed at will. You are a human being with limits, with depth, with value. When someone doesn't value you anymore, you must resist the urge to seek their recognition. That urge comes from a wounded place inside you that still believes someone else's approval defines your worth. But the truth is, the moment you withdraw your energy, you reclaim that definition. You stop waiting for someone else to name your value, and instead, you begin to live it. You start showing yourself the same presence you used to offer others. You start listening to your own thoughts, honoring your own feelings, and respecting your own boundaries. You become less about proving and more about being. That shift, subtle yet powerful, marks the beginning of true inner strength. It is not reactive, not explosive, not emotional in the traditional sense. It is calm. It is steady. It is undeniable. Withdrawing your energy can feel like loss at first. You might miss the connection even if it was one-sided. You might feel the sting of being overlooked. But over time, you'll notice something else taking root. A sense of peace that you didn't have when you were constantly trying to be enough for someone else. You'll begin to breathe deeper, stand taller, and think more clearly. You'll begin to move through the world with a quiet confidence that doesn't need permission to exist. This isn't about manipulating others or making them miss you. It's about no longer begging them to see what they've already chosen to ignore. It's about realizing that some people only appreciate your presence when they feel your absence. And sometimes, the greatest clarity comes when you stop speaking and start watching what remains when you are no longer trying. You learn that distance is a filter. It shows you who makes the effort, who respects your absence, and who only stayed close because you kept showing up. When you stop chasing, those who truly care will notice. They will reach out. They will ask why you've gone quiet. But if they don't, that tells you everything you need to know. Energy doesn't lie. You can feel when it's being reciprocated, and you can feel when it's being drained. So when that shift happens, when your presence becomes optional, when your words go unheard, when your efforts are dismissed, don't fight harder. Don't explain yourself again. Don't try to convince someone to value what they no longer see. Pull back, recenter, refocus, because your energy is sacred, and who you give it to shapes your peace, your strength, and your future. Silence is often misunderstood. In a world that encourages constant communication, rapid responses, and loud declarations of feelings, silence is mistaken for weakness, avoidance, or passivity. But when used with intention, silence becomes one of the most powerful responses you can offer, especially when someone stops valuing you. Instead of chasing after answers, validation, or connection, silence creates space, creates distance, and in that space, truth begins to reveal itself. When someone starts to take you for granted, your first instinct might be to talk more, to explain yourself, to fight for their attention. You might find yourself repeating the same things, hoping your words will suddenly reach them in a way they hadn't before. But words lose meaning when someone has already decided not to listen. They hear the sound, but not the message. They see your effort, but it doesn't move them. This is when silence speaks louder than any conversation ever could. There is a different kind of language in your silence. It says, I am no longer willing to argue for my worth. I am no longer trying to be seen by someone who has chosen to close their eyes. Silence is not about punishing the other person. It's about protecting your own energy. It's about choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and dignity over desperation. When you go silent, not to manipulate, but to reclaim your space, you give both yourself and the other person a mirror. In your silence, they must face the reality of your absence. They must sit with the emptiness where your energy used to be. And sometimes that absence speaks volumes, creates a void that can no longer be ignored or filled with distraction. Chasing someone who doesn't value you pulls you away from yourself. It draws you into a pattern of self-abandonment. You override your own needs, your own intuition, just to keep someone else close. And in the process, you lose pieces of yourself. Silence breaks that cycle. It allows you to return to yourself, to ground your thoughts, and to hear the voice you've been drowning out in your pursuit of someone else's attention. There is a kind of healing that only happens in silence. Teaches you patience, teaches you observation. You begin to notice the things that words try to cover, the shifts in tone, the lack of effort, the emotional distance. You stop explaining away behavior that was already telling you everything you needed to know. You begin to trust what you feel, not just what you hear. People reveal themselves when you go quiet. Those who truly care will notice your silence. They'll reach out, ask if you're okay, or wonder where you've gone. But those who were only present when it was convenient, those who thrived on your constant giving, they will fade. And in that fading, you gain the clarity you were chasing with your words. It's not easy to remain silent when your heart is full of unspoken things. But sometimes the most respectful thing you can do for yourself and for the situation is to stop trying to force understanding. Let people sit with your absence. Let them feel the stillness. It's in that stillness that realizations are born. It's in that quiet that people come face to face with what they've overlooked. Silence is strength. It is not the absence of feeling, but the presence of self-control. It shows that you are no longer driven by the need to convince or to plead. You are willing to let things be. You are willing to allow the natural consequences of someone's choices to unfold without your interference. When you choose silence, you are choosing to listen to your intuition, to your emotions, to your body's signals. You are choosing to observe instead of react. You begin to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. And from that place of clarity, your decisions become more grounded, more authentic. There is immense peace that comes from no longer needing to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Silence removes the pressure to perform, to persuade, to be anything other than what you are. It's not a wall, but a boundary. It says, I am still here, but I am no longer offering what you refuse to value. In the end, silence gives you the space to decide what you're really willing to accept. It breaks the illusion that you need to speak louder to be heard. Because sometimes the most powerful message you can send is to say nothing at all. Self-respect is not something loud or showy. It doesn't come from how you dress, how you speak, or how many people admire you. It comes from the quiet, often unseen decision to choose yourself, especially in the moments when you feel most tempted to compromise who you are just to be accepted or loved by someone else. When you feel undervalued, dismissed, or unrecognized, self-respect is the voice within that reminds you. You do not have to stay where you are not honored. There is a very fine line between patience and self-betrayal. Many people stay in situations where they are not respected under the guise of being patient, hopeful, or loyal. But if you continue to give yourself to someone who constantly overlooks you, you're not being loyal to them, you're being disloyal to yourself. Self-respect is the quiet courage to walk away when staying means shrinking. People often confuse self-respect with pride. They think choosing yourself means you are cold, distant, or difficult. But true self-respect is not about putting others down. It's about knowing your worth even when others refuse to acknowledge it. It's about understanding that you are not obligated to tolerate neglect, emotional crumbs, or conditional love. You are not here to earn your place in someone's life. You are here to live in alignment with your own values. When someone disrespects your boundaries or takes your presence for granted, it's easy to internalize that treatment and believe it says something about you. But self-respect reminds you that their behavior is not your mirror. It is their reflection. Your worth is not up for debate based on how someone else chooses to treat you. It is steady, it is intact, and it remains whether others recognize it or not. Choosing self-respect means choosing discomfort in the short term for peace in the long term. It means saying no when your heart still wants to say yes. It means setting a boundary even when you fear it will push someone away. It means walking away from situations that don't align with your values, even if it leaves you feeling alone for a while. These moments are not easy, but they build something unshakable inside you, a foundation of self-trust.
When you practice self-respect, you stop tolerating situations that drain your energy and steal your peace. You stop trying to convince people to see your worth. You stop over-explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Instead, you begin to protect your time, your heart, your focus. You surround yourself with people who recognize the value of your presence without needing to be reminded. You cultivate environments where you can thrive instead of merely survive. There's a shift that happens when you choose self-respect. You begin to lose interest in the games people play. You no longer chase clarity from those who communicate in confusion. You stop seeking closure from those who left you in silence. Instead, you become your own source of clarity. You find peace in your own decisions. You begin to move from a place of inner stability, no longer needing others to validate your path. People may not always like the version of you that chooses self-respect. They may call you distant, detached, or difficult. That's because they can no longer access the parts of you they once used to take from. They're no longer able to benefit from your silence, your flexibility, your willingness to bend. But that's not your burden to carry. You're not here to make everyone comfortable. You're here to live truthfully, even if that truth means disappointing others. The most powerful thing about self-respect is that it cannot be taken. It must be given away. And when you stop giving it away to those who don't value it, everything begins to change. You start attracting different people, different energy, different outcomes. You begin to operate from a place of inner abundance, not emotional desperation. You make decisions based on your values, not your fears. When you live with self-respect, you stop waiting to be chosen. You realize that you are already whole. You stop entertaining situations that force you to question your worth. You stop pouring into connections that leave you empty. You learn to walk away with grace, not because you don't care, but because you care deeply about your own well-being. This kind of strength is quiet. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. It simply exists firm, steady, and unshakable. It is the foundation upon which true peace, confidence, and purpose are built.
Absence is often feared. It feels like loss, like rejection, like something has gone missing that was once familiar. But in reality, absence is one of the greatest teachers of value. When you step back, when you stop showing up with the same frequency, when you stop giving your presence freely, you invite a kind of clarity that no conversation or confrontation can offer. It's in the space you leave behind that people begin to see what you truly brought into their lives. Human beings are creatures of habit. We grow used to routines, to people, to patterns. When someone is always there, available, forgiving, understanding, we begin to assume their presence is permanent. We stop noticing the small things they do. We stop appreciating the comfort they bring. We take them for granted, not always out of malice, but out of familiarity. But when that presence fades, when the voice goes quiet, when the energy retreats, everything changes. That silence becomes louder than words. That space becomes a mirror. Absence reveals what words could not. It shows the truth of how someone felt about you, not through what they said, but through how they respond to your distance. If someone valued you deeply, your absence will not go unnoticed. They will feel the shift. They will reach out, reflect, ask questions. But if they don't, if your withdrawal is met with silence or indifference, then your presence was never truly recognized to begin with. People often underestimate the impact of consistent presence. They don't realize that someone answering their calls, listening without judgment, showing up without asking for anything in return, that those are not obligations but choices. When you choose to remove those things, not out of spite but out of self-awareness, you give others the opportunity to feel the weight of your worth. Not because you want to be missed, but because you no longer want to be taken for granted. You learn a lot about people when you create distance. You see who still checks on you, who still includes you, who still shows up when they're not benefiting from your energy. That distance becomes a filter. It separates those who were truly connected to you from those who were merely comfortable around you. It exposes who valued your soul and who only valued your service. But absence doesn't only reveal how others feel, it reveals something to you as well. It shows you what you were tolerating. It helps you see the imbalance in a dynamic that you might have ignored while you were emotionally invested. When you pull back, you start noticing how much effort you were putting in, how many compromises you made, how many times you gave without receiving. You begin to understand that not everyone deserves your presence, your loyalty, your heart. Sometimes the act of stepping away is not about them. It's about you. It's about giving yourself the space to return to clarity. It's about learning how to be at peace without needing constant engagement. It's about strengthening the relationship you have with yourself so you stop depending on external validation. That kind of solitude is not loneliness. It's self-restoration. It's healing. It's remembering who you are when you are no longer trying to be everything for someone else. There's a quiet transformation that happens when you embrace absence as a tool instead of a threat. You stop fearing disconnection. You stop clinging to what no longer feeds your spirit. You stop investing in one-sided relationships that leave you emotionally bankrupt. Instead, you begin to recognize your own value, not because someone tells you, but because you feel it in your decision to preserve your energy. And when you come back, if you choose to, you come back different, stronger, wiser, more aware of what you bring and less willing to settle for being overlooked. You don't return to prove your worth, but to live it. You don't re-engage with desperation, but with discernment. Because once you've seen the truth that absence reveals, you can't unsee it. Absence does not mean weakness. It does not mean giving up. It means you respect yourself enough to step away when your presence is no longer valued. It means you trust that what's meant for you will recognize your worth without having to be reminded again and again. And it means that in the quiet space you create, real value will either rise or vanish. Either way, you gain the truth. Your worth doesn't shrink in someone else's blind spot. Just because someone fails to recognize your value doesn't mean it's disappeared. Just because you're not seen clearly through their limited perspective doesn't mean you've become small. Too often, people internalize rejection as a reflection of their identity. They begin to question their value, to search themselves for flaws, to assume that being overlooked means they aren't enough. But this is a dangerous illusion, one that slowly pulls you away from your own truth. When someone can no longer see your light, it says more about the limits of their vision than it does about the strength of your glow. You are not less intelligent, less kind, less beautiful, or less worthy just because someone else can't or won't recognize it. You may have handed your sincerity, your effort, your vulnerability to someone who didn't know what to do with it, but that doesn't mean it was wasted. It only means it was misplaced. A person who's not in the right state of awareness cannot perceive the depth of someone who is. That mismatch in perception is not a fault, it's simply a misalignment. Some people are only capable of recognizing superficial things, what benefits them, what entertains them, what's convenient. So when you show up with presence, depth, consistency, and truth, they might not know how to receive it. And in their confusion or immaturity, they might try to reduce you to something simple, small, or replaceable. But their inability to see your value does not remove it from you. You are still everything you were before their recognition faded. You are still as valuable as the day you first showed up in their life. It is not your role to shrink yourself until you fit into the narrow frame of someone else's limited understanding. The more you try to adjust, to bend, to mold yourself into what they can recognize, the further you drift from your own identity. And what for? A moment of attention from someone who can't meet you where you truly are? When you begin to reclaim your worth, you stop seeking mirrors in other people. You stop relying on their reactions to tell you who you are. Instead, you begin to anchor yourself in your own knowing. You understand that real value doesn't fluctuate based on approval. It remains constant. It's like the sky, unmoved by the passing of clouds. Some days it's seen clearly, and other days it's hidden, but it never stops being what it is. This shift in mindset is essential, especially when dealing with rejection or emotional abandonment. If you don't hold on to your worth, the opinions of others will convince you to abandon yourself. You'll start editing your personality, minimizing your emotions, walking on eggshells, all in the hope of being accepted. But self-worth is not built on pleasing others. It's built on self-honesty, self-respect, and the refusal to settle for conditional love. People often fail to see what they're not ready to handle. Your strength, your stability, your depth. These things can be intimidating to someone who's still unsure of their own place in the world. And sometimes, instead of rising to meet you, they choose to turn away. Let them. Because your task isn't to slow down your growth to keep someone company. Your task is to continue evolving, even if it means walking alone for a while. The truth is, being undervalued can be a gift. Not because it feels good, but because it forces you to go inward. It invites you to examine the roots of your self-worth. It challenges you to find value in your solitude, in your effort, in your truth. And once you find that place inside yourself that knows, really knows you are worthy, you stop entertaining those who make you feel like you aren't. You begin to carry yourself differently. You speak with more certainty, choose with more clarity, and walk away with more peace. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop explaining your soul to people who only listen with their ego. And you start living from a place of quiet strength, a strength that doesn't waver when someone else can't see you clearly. Not everyone is meant to understand your worth. Not everyone is meant to stay. But that doesn't make your value any less real. Some people will recognize it the moment they meet you. Others will only see it once you've gone. But your worth was never defined by their ability to notice it. It has always been there, untouched, undiminished, unchanged.